Hi everyone, good afternoon, good evening. These are the embers of a fire I made today for my grandchildren and sons. It was the boy's birthday today, and for the first time in over a month my grandchildren came to see us. It was just so wonderful. So we made a fire out here in the back. Here's the backyard. So much to be done in the garden, but we haven't been able to go and buy soil and different things. And at the end of today, what we did, I took my grandkids, and that wisteria vine was threaded through a trellis, and we unthreaded it. I posted some pictures on Instagram. So we unthreaded it and then braided it into that, and I think that I might do a little archway there across going to Jenny the giraffe. Anyway, I wanted to share something with you. If I can just turn it around. And that was a story. I was having a conversation, a chat with my friend Hillary today on my way to pick up the grandchildren, and she's in mourning for her father, and so am I. So we were speaking about it, and she told me that she has been saying Kaddish for her father, and then she said, well, I guess it's nothing, but I do it. And I shared with her that I know of a woman who was also an only daughter, or not an only daughter, but only one of only daughters, and generally it's the son who says Kaddish. It has to be a man who says it in shul. But this woman went to the Rebbe shul to 770, and she was saying Kaddish daily. And then she stopped, for whatever reason it was, she stopped saying Kaddish, and at one point she landed up on a Sunday going to receive $1 from the Rebbe. And he said to her when she arrived, he said, what happened to your Kaddish? I had much nachas, I had much pleasure from it. I thought that was just so profound. He was downstairs in the shul and she was upstairs in the women's section, but he heard that Kaddish and the sanctification, the elevation of the soul that she offered up in honor of her father, and celebrated it. Anyway, so when there was minyan, I've been going to shul and saying Kaddish as well for my father, based on that story, and I shared that with Hillary, and then I told her another story that came to mind, so I thought I'll share it with you. The Alter Rebbe is the author of the Tanya. At a certain point in his life, it was revealed to him that because there was so much holiness that had happened from the Tanya that he had written. I mean, our lives, the world has been transformed. Every person's life has been transformed from the text, whether they know it or not. But as a result of that, there was a decree in heaven that he was going to die. There was too much light that he was bringing to the world, and his daughter, Toraleah, knew that. She sensed something. She didn't know exactly what was afoot, but she sensed that something was going on. And so she asked her father, and he told her what was happening. And she decided that her own soul was going to go in exchange for her father's soul. That's a very remarkable thing, to be an exchange. When we say the prayer of Kapparos, the atonement prayer, we say Ze Khalifasi, this animal is the exchange for my own soul. So powerful. That's the idea of the sacrifices, the animal sacrifices that existed in biblical times. Anyway, so she decided that she was going to be the exchange for her father, and she approached 3 of the elder Hasidim and told them that she wanted to meet with them. It was something very serious. They could see from her demeanor that was the case, and she said to them, I have something to share with you, but before I do that, I need you to agree that you are going to ruling, that you're going to do what it is that I want you to do. So they thought about it and got together, and she told them what had happened about the decree against her father, and that she wanted to go in their stead, and she wanted them to rule that would be the case. They, of course, were hesitant, and she said there was an agreement that you would do whatever it is that I said before we met, when we were setting this up. And so they passed that decree. And I think it was on Rosh Hashanah, on the New Year, that she saw her father. They came back from shul, and he wanted to greet her, and she got her word in first, and she said to him, a good year, you should have a good and a sweet year. And he understood that she was going to give her life for him, which she did. On the day, I think the anniversary of her passing is on Tzom Gedalia, the fast of Gedalia, which is after the day after Rosh Hashanah. And she passed away. At the time, she had an infant, a child, who was still nursing. His name was Menachem Mendel. He later became the third Chabad Rebbe. His uncle, Dvorleah's brother, became the second Rebbe, the Mitzvah Rebbe, and he became the third one. And when he was a child, the Alter Rebbe was very close to him. I often think about that relationship. It's different, but it reminds me of the relationship that Abraham had with Lot, because Lot's father had died when Abraham went into not the cauldron, Kibshon Ha'esh. It was like a furnace that Nimrod had. And when Lot's father saw that, he followed his brother, but you had to be for real. You can't kind of pretend. You can't pretend that you're in the game if you're not really in the game. And so he died. And I often thought to myself, what was the relationship, that very deep inner relationship between Abraham and his nephew Lot? Lot looked very much like Abraham. I think that they were all identical in their features, actually. Anyway, so the relationship between the between the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, this little child of Dvorleah, Menachem Mendel, seems to me to be so evocative. And what was the love that the Rebbe had for him, not just for a grandchild and not just for a remarkable soul, but for the child of the woman who gave her life for him. And he used to sit and absorb whatever he was absorbing at his grandfather's feet. There's a beautiful story about the fact that he brought potato peels into the room, the study room, with his grandfather, and he was wrapping them. He used to wrap them around his arm like tefillin, like the straps of the tefillin that men wear. One day, he was a young child. I think he was about 3, and if I'm wrong, those of you who know can correct me, please. But he was sitting there playing at his grandfather's feet, and his grandfather had called in the elder Hasidim, and he was delivering a discourse to them. And there was one, maybe 2 Hasidim at the back of the room. They were younger. They were the youngest of the ones that were allowed in. And they were thinking to themselves, what is it? What's with this child that he's sitting at his grandfather's feet? And suddenly the Alter Rebbe stopped, and he said to the group, but he was speaking to the Chassid, those 2 Chassidim at the back, hert, he hears, you will yet hear. You will yet understand that he hears. And many years later, after the Alter Rebbe had passed and his son, the Mittler Rebbe, had passed, and the Tzemach Tzedek became Rebbe, he said his first discourse, and that discourse began exactly where the Alter Rebbe had ended. It was a commentary on his grandfather's discourse that he had heard when he was a little boy. Just remarkable, to think about who are these souls embodied as guides for us in this world. Anyway, that's kind of like a background, and what I wanted to share with you was a story about Kaddish. Of course, when Dvorleah passed away, there was no one to nurse the baby. There was no formula at that time, so they had to look for a wet nurse, and they found someone who was of sufficient holiness to nurse. I know how difficult that is. There's a Torah law that when after a child turns, I think it's 2, it's been a while, and today was the boy's 19th birthday, but I think it's after a child turns 2, if you don't nurse them consecutively for 3 days, you can't resume. And I, at the time, was speaking in Seattle, and I had a flight back, and the flight was delayed. And so I realized at the airport that if I didn't get back in time, I wasn't going to be able to resume nursing. And I had to start thinking to myself, whom do I want to be a wet nurse for my boys? Whose milk, which comes from the blood, the milk is the sweetening of the blood, whose milk am I okay with? And I called my friend Eliza. I knew that she had a daughter who was nursing at the time, Lakey, holy person, and I said, would Lakey be the wet nurse? And she said fine. And I got on that plane. What I didn't realize is that she was advised against that by a doctor who said, no, don't do it. I think he was concerned maybe the boys had been sick at the time or something. So I arrived thinking that I was going to be continuing nursing my boys, and that was the end of it, although it was a wonderful 2 years of nursing and connecting with those babies. No cell phones, so when we all lay down together to eat, it was just the 3 of us, very special. Anyway, so coming back to the story of the Tzemach Tzedek, little Rebbe Nachum Mendel, he was a baby and there was no infant formula. They needed someone, and they found a woman who was holy and could feed him, and there were strict instructions, dietary instructions for her, and washing the infant's hands before he ate and saying blessings, etc. And she nursed Menachem Mendel, and he then grew up and he became the 3rd Chabad Rebbe. Many years passed, and as she grew older, she approached the Rebbe and she told him that she had no one to say Kaddish for her. Now, I don't know if she had sons who had passed away or she didn't have sons, but that was her situation, and she had a request of the Tzemach Tzedek, which was that he say Kaddish for her. And he said, of course, thank you so much for what you did for me. You sustained me, you kept me alive. I appreciate that, and I'll definitely say Kaddish and let the Chevra Kaddish, the Holy Burial Society, know. So when she passed, they told the Rebbe, and he began to say Kaddish. I guess it was Mincha, the afternoon prayer, and then the evening prayer. And that night, when he was asleep, she appeared to him in a dream, and she said, Rebbe, I have a favor for you to ask of you. He said, sure. She said, my request is that you stop saying Kaddish for me and find someone else to say it. And he said to her, why? It's no problem. I told you I'm full of gratitude that you nursed me. And she said, it's not that I don't want to bother you. It's that where your Kaddish sends my soul does not belong. What a story. What a remarkable story. I think about it in the times that I'm in shul and part of a minyan and able to say my meager Kaddish. I mean, of course, we've hired people, and my husband was saying Kaddish, and his brother for my father, etc. I just thought I'd share that. A beautiful afternoon. The sun is starting to set, and I'm in the backyard. There was nothing here when we moved in, only concrete, and as I posted on Instagram the other day, we may be shut down, but nature isn't. God's working his magic. And anyway, I thought I would share that story. All these talks are in honor of my father, Shalom ben Shabtai, and my friend's mother, Sara, Raizel bas Reuven. Their soul should have an aliyah, and I'm glad we could hang out a little bit. I'll just share the garden with you. That's the wisteria that we bound today. My grandson Menachem was just amazing. He helped me unthread it, and This is where our sukkah hangs, but we'll probably make a little archway. And I think I shared the rest with you. Still lots to do. There's that that azalea coming into bloom. A maple tree. This maple tree once nearly died. I came back from South Africa. My husband picked me up on a flight, and I could see it was dying. It was so cold. It was almost winter, and I didn't even take my suitcases inside. I just came out and pulled this out. It had been sold to us by a gardener who did not have holes. That were, whatever, this pot didn't have holes in the bottom, and I made those holes, and look how she's doing, just great. Anyway, here are the embers of our fire. I'm sitting here in its warmth and sending you and yours blessing. All the best. Bye bye.